Welcome to the Data Product Management in Action podcast, created and executive produced by me, Scott Hirleman, and brought to you by Soda, your best friend in data quality and contracts tooling. We created this podcast to serve as a place for actual practitioners bringing product management practices to data, whether that is to AI and ML, data products, platforms, or everything else in data, right? And it's to dig into the nitty-gritty of product management in data, but in fun and dynamic conversations. It's not just lift and shift from software product management. We have a great set of hosts for you that are also practitioners, so they can really get into those specifics and dive deep and get you the information you want to know rather than just high level, here is what a data product is. This is about cutting through the noise of data product management to drive towards actionable insights, hence the actual podcast name, Data Product Management in Action. So sit back and enjoy another awesome conversation.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Data Product Management in Action podcast. I'm your host, Frannie Helforoush, and today we're going to have a great conversation with my lovely guest, Nathan Worrell. In today's episode, we are going to discuss how Nathan defines his data products, how he applies the product mindset to the whole process, and a lot more. And quick disclaimer that here Nathan is representing his own view and is not representing the view of his company. So please welcome Nathan. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, everyone. Hey, Frannie. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Would you please introduce yourself a little bit for the audience, your background, and what you do now?
Sure. Yeah, so I am a data analytics product manager. I've really been passionate about the application of AI since grad school. It's been, the connecting story throughout my whole career. But going a little further back, I grew up in Florida, in Ponte Vedra. So, I love the beach. I love the sunshine. But now I'm here in Atlanta, where I went to grad school at Georgia Tech. Really enjoying my time here and the various and diverse roles that I've been able to have, all with that, recurring theme of AI and data analytics. So I'm very passionate about, how data enables AI and data products in general. I've also really always been interested in both technology and business. So always kind of one foot in each camp. I feel like I really enjoy communication. So that's where product management seemed like a really good fit for me. And especially in data and AI, where we have these very complicated topics that sometimes need to be explained to key stakeholders who may not understand them as well. That's where a product manager can come in and add a lot of value to help those products be a success. So yeah, I love what I do, and I'm excited to talk about it with you.
That's great. We're excited as well. You're right. Like in data product management, the product manager being a bridge between business and tech is a little bit more clear, I guess, than other areas of product management. Can you also tell us a little bit about your product? As well as your customers, users, either internal, external, what type of data product you're producing for them?
Sure. So I currently work at Cortland, which is a REIT in the multifamily housing industry with about $20 billion in gross real estate value. So we are an investment, development, and management firm. So all in one, very vertically integrated, and we take a uniquely resident-centric approach. So we're really trying to incorporate technology and utilize data in a way that can really improve the resident experience and in ways that are pretty innovative for our industry. So I'm a senior data analytics product manager here at Cortland, and I work on pretty much any data-related initiative. So I work with our data engineering team on integrations and automation. I work with our business intelligence team to build those reports and dashboards that drive the business. And then my favorite part, data science and AI applications as well. So As far as customers, most of mine in my current role are internal. We have a few externally facing dashboards for our investors, but mostly I'm supporting the technical teams and our support teams who are helping make the business more efficient and to, drive that top line revenue, improve our net operating income so that we can be more efficient and really get the benefits of that vertically integrated business model.
Okay, that's great. So, what is your end product? Is it like what is it that you represent to the customers at the end? Is it like a dashboard or is it like data packages?
Yeah, I'd say it's probably all of every category you can think of. Oftentimes with data engineering, it's going to be a kind of a raw data set or a table that's going to be picked up by our other more technical teams. So that's where we consider a lot of data engineering requirements and data contracts and things like that. Another, probably the most common type of data product that I'll produce is a dashboard that supports decision making. So, we use Power BI to support every part of our business. We're a very data-driven company. So that's a really important and, usually a foundational data product that you might find yourself working on. And then, of course, we also build a lot of predictive models. So to kind of separate AI, which now has become a very ambiguous term, we do a lot of analytical AI. So that's going to be your traditional machine learning algorithms. Some of the most important products are trying to predict our demand. So how many applications are we going to get for our vacant units? And that's going to be pulling from a lot of really cool data sources, from Google Analytics to our internet listing services, and trying to understand how those leads are going to convert in our pipeline. And then on the other side, also trying to predict supply. So we have a churn model that's outputting predictions that our business teams are using to help kind of project the state of our assets at some future date. So a lot of those predictions are served up in a dashboard. But, as far as the product itself, I'm really trying to understand the best way to deliver that information. What factors, or in data science features, are we going to consider? And the best way to, again, portray that data to the users. And then finally, I'll allude a little bit to some of the generative AI work on the other side, which is, a very exciting time right now. A lot of great use cases I've found in real estate, which is exciting, whether it's trying to understand customer sentiment by analyzing the data in our CRM. That's a really great use case right now, and tying that into our customer segmentation models to understand where to invest next, or how best to staff our assets so that we can provide great customer experience. That's another really exciting use case. And then we're also looking more on the investment side of how we can analyze due diligence documentation that we get, or loan documentation, some really, time-saving use cases where we can take unstructured data from a PDF and put it through a process that's able to spit out that key information in a really structured way that's easy to digest for our users. So, I work with stakeholders across the business and deliver these data insights in a lot of different ways, but those are just some of my favorite examples.
Very, very interesting. I'm very interested to know, how do you decide the scope of what you're building? Like, how do you decide the scope of MVP? What is necessary? What is nice to have? Because they are all leading to lots of data decision making applications or dashboards, or all of those use cases are along those lines, I'm guessing. So people need everything, right? So how do you define scope?
Yeah, that is such an important question. That is really key for a product manager to answer. So, I look at it in a few different ways to understand, the scope, or what's really needed here. So the most important thing that I always look at is value, right? How much value is this product going to bring to the business? And in what ways can you quantify that value? Is it going to be revenue generating? Does it support revenue related decisions? Or is it more on the time saving side? I think these are examples of very relevant questions that'll help you prioritize this product against presumably a very large backlog of other competing features. So yeah, you're exactly right. There's always a lot of requests coming in. And so we have to understand and prioritize them, and also consider like, how confident are we in that value proposition? So sometimes we may want to run a pilot or deliver an MVP, not going straight to a fully fledged product, but really just trying to de-risk the endeavor as a whole, right? Sometimes the most valuable thing about an MVP can just be learning, right? It can help us validate our assumptions and understand, do we want to go all the way with this product and invest more resources, or do we have more confidence to just say no and prioritize other things? And in general, I'd say learning to say no is a really foundational skill to product management. So, there's always going to be more opportunity than your team can tackle.
And how often you apply reusability to that? So you continue with whatever you were saying, but also think about this, like, how do you, do you think that, okay, let me make this a lot more reusable, because that needs a lot of, thinking ahead and planning ahead. But no, let me think about a speed and get it out fast, but then think about reusability later.
Yeah, very important question to ask. I think part of it is that value proposition I mentioned. If it's like going to be a kind of a core data product that supports, that is going to support a lot of other products, then you might put a little more effort into the reusability, right? But, another, just in general, a really important consideration is the capacity of your engineering or delivery team. So you kind of have to take a look at the roadmap and what you've already committed to. And this is where strong partnership with your engineering leadership is key. You're always considering trade-offs, trying to understand what that minimum functionality is that's going to deliver value, so that, again, you can validate assumptions or just like get something out to the business. But yeah, what I find so fascinating about data is reusability and the ability to architect really scalable solutions that can deliver value in a lot of different ways down the road. So, I love taking the time to kind of architect a good reusable solution, but also you sometimes have to work at the pace of the business, right? So, I think it's an efficient use of resources to sometimes do an MVP and see if it's worth building out further. And it's often really key to getting that stakeholder buy-in that you need to make your data product a success, so that you can build that more scalable and reusable solution in the long run.
So speaking of that, what is your experience with the customers understanding iteration? Because there are cases that they don't necessarily understand the iteration and they want everything at the same time. Like, when you're finished, you have to be finished fully, right? And then you have to explain the concept of iteration. Now, this is the first iteration, and then we will add to it slowly. So have you had that experience, and how do you deal with it?
Oh yeah, that's a really common problem. In companies who have a mature product practice, there's probably a lot more interest in the iteration approach. But in some companies, like you said, it's really uncommon, and you kind of have to educate them. And that's where I think being able to discern a minimum viable product, right? That means what's going to quickly be able to add value, and being able to discern that from all the nice to haves can be a really important way to help you negotiate with those stakeholders and be able to say, well, it may take us 6 months to give you everything you want, but what if we can give you the most important thing in 3 months? Wouldn't that be interesting to you? And when you can really deliver on that iterative development in quicker timelines, I think that's what helps you build trust, which is really the most important thing with your stakeholders, whether internal or external. You want them to believe in you, that you can deliver on what you promise and when you promise. And then once you're able to do that and go through that cycle a couple of times with them, that really helps them open up to iterative development as a whole and just trust you as a product manager to deliver what they really need. So that's where I think that the skill set of just asking great questions, I think it's one of the most important signs of a good leader is, asking those discerning questions to be what's important versus what is a nice to have. So yeah, it's a tough problem, but it takes time to build that relationship.
Oh yeah, for sure. Great. Thanks for the answer. That was a great answer. So I know that we touched on like product thinking a lot when we were talking about the type of data products and the customers. But if you want to go a couple of steps back, how do you apply the product thinking, your product mindset to your data product? How do you productionize the data? How do you release them, for example? Like, give me more concrete examples so the audience also understand exactly how do you do day by day.
Yeah. Maybe to answer this question with a concrete example, we can just use BI dashboards. Because I think that's, again, one of the most ubiquitous use cases in data in business, right? So, we can have a discussion about whether the dashboard is part of the data product or if it's like an interface to the product and the product is really just the underlying data. I think there's interesting discussion about that online, but maybe for simplicity, let's just group it together and say, BI products. We've already talked about understanding our users, right? That's one of the core functions of product management. And that, includes things like considering the user experience. So what is going to be the visualization on your dashboard that, tells that story and helps them make those decisions. And so understanding that with those discerning questions we mentioned earlier is an important part of the product process, right? We're not just going to go and build dashboards because somebody asked for it or someone had an idea, but we're really going to evaluate the value that those are going to deliver. And so part of that, I think, is understanding with, taking BI as our example, the landscape as a whole. So if you have to support a lot of different use cases, understanding where your gaps are or where your product is a little stronger. And that just comes a lot from interviewing customers and stakeholders. One thing that's really important to me as a product manager is feedback. So I really try to always implement a way to collect feedback. Of course, you need those user interviews, but a form kind of embedded in your product can also be a great way for people to give feedback when they're kind of in the tool working with it, whatever that product might be. So implementing that feedback into, your backlog management process is really important. So I've throughout my career practiced Agile, which is kind of the de facto way of managing engineering development these days. And, it's a really great way to manage, organize, and prioritize those features that you may want to build into a great product. So I've talked about a few steps of, product lifecycle management, right? So getting the requirements up front, organizing them into the backlog. There's development, of course. But one of the most important parts of product management that I think people sometimes miss is the back end of, getting that feedback, doing ongoing maintenance and continuous improvement. So a product is not necessarily just a one and done kind of deal. Sometimes it is, and that's okay. But if you're building, like a SaaS product that you want to continuously improve over time, or, it's time to iterate after that MVP, you want to have kind of a consistent cycle of interviews and feedback with your users to understand what's the next big thing that we can add to the product. So that's a really important part, I think, that I really enjoy, because that's how you build that relationship. And when you can deliver a feature to someone who requested it, or, of course it goes through that whole prioritization process, but when you can know where that feedback came from and kind of call that out to the person when you actually deliver on it, I think that's one of the most gratifying parts of product management, solving specific customers' needs and seeing their eyes light up when, you bring them data that they thought didn't exist, or an insight that makes their job so much easier. That's why I love what I do. It's really like a people and customer oriented role that is very rewarding in that way. So, you mentioned also release management, right? It is kind of we want to deliver continuously, but sometimes you want to package those in a release, especially when it's an important product with, high impact to users if something goes wrong, or if you're making a foundational change to the way it works. That release usually should have some important artifacts with it, like documentation. And that's, a skill set that I really believe in, whether it's upfront gathering requirements or in delivering that release. You want to have comprehensive documentation that helps your product be as self-serve as possible. So, you really want to understand your audience, who's going to be using your product, obviously, but who's going to be consuming the documentation too. You want to highlight those problems you're solving, the bugs you're fixing, but also the big wins of new features you're implementing as well. So yeah, I really believe in documentation, and with a data product that can kind of take very specific forms, right? And it might be a data dictionary that defines those fields. But it also might be on the data science side, kind of defining how your model works. Like, what are the features that are part of it, and how are they used to create your predictive output? That I feel like is especially important with data science, where if you have internal stakeholders, you really need to get that buy-in and build that trust. If they look at your model and see it as a black box, there's a lot of risk of lack of adoption, right? And they might not want to use it or stick to the way that they've been doing things. So getting upfront and understanding how they think about the problem at hand, and then being able to communicate your data model or your AI in ways that they can understand using their own language is so important. And again, one of the reasons why product managers can deliver so much value around these products. So I know I said a lot of things there. Hopefully it's answering your question.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree. I always say that documentation is part of user experience for data products, because you don't necessarily have a UI. So your user experience is mostly around like data literacy and like documentation and everything that you bring at the end to the users. So I love the answer. I also love that you touched on user interview and user feedback, like in the beginning and at the end, right? So it's like a cycle that goes around together. That is very important for beginning and also continuing the product. So thank you so much. That was great. We talked about customer relationship as well. Just wanted to know that, do you have any personal hack to the great relationship, like other than the things that you just mentioned? Do you have any word of wisdom that you can share on how you're managing, your trust and your customer relationship?
Yeah, I don't know if I have a hack per se, but some of my most cherished feedback has been that I'm very empathetic. And I feel like that's super important for building trust, really listening to people and understanding what their problems are. And there's a lot of people that want to just bring cool technology and build a product around it, right? But so many customers will look at that and be like, this doesn't solve my problem, or I don't know where this is coming from. But when you can really understand someone, what their day-to-day is like, and how they use data to support that day-to-day, you can build something that kind of feels personalized to them. And that's really rewarding when you see that in a customer. So I think empathy is super important. There's not really like a hack, a way to get around it. You can't just look at surveys all day and, use Gen AI to analyze your surveys and figure out what the problem is. Sometimes you really just need to sit down with the customer and talk to them and understand the problem in their own words from their perspective. And then when they see you, and when you build that trust and see you along with the product, sometimes that can be so valuable for the adoption of the product beyond its inherent value. I mean, obviously it has to do something useful, right? But when they trust you, sometimes they'll trust the product as well. So that's a really great thing when that happens. Another thing, I think I mentioned trust before, right? So when it kind of takes time to build that trust, you may need to go through a couple iteration cycles and deliver some things of value before they can really, believe in you and what you tell them as far as the timeline and the roadmap. So sometimes I think patience as well. A lot of people, especially new young product managers, want to jump in and like solve the world's problems, right? But taking the time to really get to know your stakeholders when you start a new job or when you enter a new industry with new customers can be, a really good time to take before you just jump into applying that cool technology. So yeah, I mean, I also mentioned feedback. That is still a really important part, right? Continuously learning, because your solution might just uncover a new problem that they have, or you may deliver that MVP, but you can always go deeper, right? There's a greater problem to solve or something connected to it that now you can solve after the MVP. So continuing to have those conversations with the stakeholders is really important too.
I love it. I love all of your personal hacks, and I totally agree with that. Those are really, really useful. Even though it may sound easy, but it's not in reality easy to implement. So it needs a lot of experiment and a lot of interaction with people to understand how you can go around that. Any final thoughts, any final word of wisdom that you can share with us?
Sure. I mean, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't touch on generative AI a little bit. Very hot right now, a lot of really cool use cases. I mentioned using it to analyze customer feedback can be really interesting. And I think one use case in my current role that is very exciting is, I might have mentioned it earlier, but it's looking through all of our CRM data, looking at the call transcripts and email and text conversations we're having and trying to understand what the common problems are. What are the effective ways of communicating? Gen AI analysis can be a great way to retain your best call center employees and understand who's performing well and why they're performing well. So just general text-based analysis is really cool. And some thoughts I have on generative AI in general is, encouraging companies to really think about their proprietary data sources. So for us, our CRM data is a great example. In the world of large language models that are trained on everything the internet has and have a ton of general knowledge, the ability to combine those with your own proprietary data can help you build something that's truly special and unique that nobody else can replicate, right? So as AI continues to eat up a lot of different software out there and provide a lot of different functionality, it's going to be the way that we marry that with our proprietary data products that I think is going to be really cool to see. So definitely encourage companies to strategize about how they're collecting, protecting, and maybe acquiring third-party data sources to supplement their Gen AI use cases. I'd love to learn more about that and talk through it more, but yeah, those are my initial thoughts.
Thank you. Yeah, let's have another episode just go through generative AI and anything data and AI products related. But thank you so much for this episode. I think we learned a lot. We got a lot of insight from you. So thank you so much for joining the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Frannie. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks, Nathan. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much for listening. Hopefully you got some great actionable insights out of this episode. We're so excited to dig deeper into data product management and its many facets. If you want to engage more with the show, you can follow us on LinkedIn and check out Soda's website at soda.io for more related content around product management in data. And if you are a practitioner bringing product management practices to data and want to potentially be a guest, please check the show notes for a link to apply. As always, we strongly encourage people from underrepresented groups in tech to apply. Much as I'm a handsome devil, we don't want all our guests only looking like me. So again, let's get excited for more digging into data product management in action.